Have you ever had that sinking feeling that something about your behavior is putting people off, but nobody has the courage to tell you directly? As we get older, we develop patterns. Some serve us well, bringing wisdom and comfort, but others? Well, others can quietly push away the very people we care about most. You might think you're just being authentic, just being yourself. But the reality is, those around you are watching. And while they love you too much to say anything harsh, certain habits can slowly change how they see you, how they interact with you, and how comfortable they feel in your presence. Today, we're going to talk about 12 behaviors that many older adults unknowingly develop, things that everyone notices but nobody dares mention. I'm not talking about physical changes or things beyond your control. I'm talking about choices, habits, and ways of being that can quietly erode the respect and connection you've built over a lifetime. Each point we discuss will give you a chance to look in the mirror, not to judge yourself, but to ask, is this helping me connect with others, or is it creating distance? And here's what's encouraging about this. Every single one of these behaviors can be changed. The hardest part is simply recognizing them. By the time we're done here, you'll not only understand what to watch for, but you'll also know how to move through your later years with more warmth, dignity, and genuine connection. So stick around until the end, because you might discover that a few small adjustments could completely transform how others experience you, and more importantly, how you experience yourself. Let's dive in. The first thing people notice but rarely mention is when personal care starts to slip. I'm not talking about anything dramatic here. It's the subtle things. Clothes that look like they've been worn a few days in a row, hair that hasn't seen a brush, fingernails that have grown just a bit too long, maybe a lingering smell that follows you around. These might seem minor, but they speak louder than words. You see, taking care of yourself isn't just about being clean. It's about how you present yourself to the world. When we're younger, these habits are automatic. But as we age, energy can fade, routines can change, and some people start thinking, what's the point anymore? That shift is subtle, but everyone around you feels it. They won't say anything because they don't want to hurt your feelings. Especially family members who aren't sure how to bring up something so personal. Instead, they quietly adjust. They sit a little further away during visits. They don't linger as long for conversations. They might hesitate before giving hugs. But what they're really responding to isn't you as a person. It's the message your appearance is sending. It tells them you might be giving up on yourself a little, that maybe you don't value yourself the way you once did. And here's the hard truth. When you stop caring for yourself, people unconsciously start treating you with less warmth and respect. Now, this doesn't mean you need to dress like you're going to a party every day or spend hours on your appearance. But a clean shirt, combed hair, and trimmed nails go a long way. They tell everyone around you that you're still present, still engaged, still someone who respects both yourself and them. People respond to your energy before they respond to your words. And how you take care of yourself is one of the clearest signals of that energy. When you show up looking like you care, it invites others to treat you with the kindness and dignity you deserve. Something else that tends to happen as we age is that the little voice inside that used to say, maybe keep that thought to yourself, starts getting quieter. You begin speaking your mind more freely, maybe even feeling proud that you've earned the right to say whatever you want. And while that might feel liberating, the people around you often experience something very different. They feel uncomfortable. There's a delicate balance between honesty and harshness, and over time you might find yourself saying things that make people pause, shift uncomfortably, or avoid eye contact. It might be a sign that what's coming out isn't just truth, it's criticism wrapped in honesty. Maybe you've caught yourself making comments about someone's weight, their appearance, their relationship choices, or how they're raising their children. You might brush it off with a laugh and say, "I'm just telling it like it is," or "People are too sensitive nowadays." But here's what's really happening. Honesty without kindness just sounds like judgment, and the people on the receiving end rarely confront you about it. They just start pulling back. You'll notice they stop including you in certain conversations, or they don't call as often. They still love you, but they're protecting themselves from those small, stinging remarks that you might not even realize are hurtful. This doesn't mean you need to walk on eggshells or never speak your mind, but it does mean taking a moment before you speak to ask yourself, will this help or hurt? Is this kind? Because sometimes what feels like sharing wisdom is really just releasing frustration, and it lands much harder than you intended. A simple rule to follow is this. If you wouldn't want someone saying it to your grandchild, maybe don't say it to someone else's child either. The beauty of growing older is the wisdom you carry. When that wisdom comes wrapped in compassion, people lean in, they listen, they seek your advice. But when it comes coated in criticism or judgment, they start tuning out even when your intentions are good. Your words have power, maybe now more than ever. Use them to build bridges, not walls. If you're finding value in this discussion, please let me know by commenting "helpful" below. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I'd encourage you to do so and turn on notifications so you don't miss future content. Your support helps us keep creating meaningful discussions like this one. There's something comforting about familiar routines, wearing the same style of clothes, eating the same breakfast, following the same patterns. Consistency isn't a bad thing. But when it comes to clothing, what once looked timeless can start to look careless over time. You might not notice it yourself, but the way your clothes fit or don't fit says something about how connected you are to the present moment. Pants that hang too loose, shirts that are too tight, styles from decades past, or shoes that have lost their shape entirely. These aren't just fashion choices, they quietly communicate that you've stopped paying attention to how you appear to others. While no one will directly comment, they definitely notice. This isn't about following trends or trying to look decades younger. It's about showing the world that you still see yourself as someone worth looking after. When people see an older adult wearing clothes that fit well and look cared for, they feel something immediately. Respect. It tells them this person still shows up in the world with dignity. Think about it this way. You wouldn't wear the same outfit to an important meeting that you wore 20 years ago, would you? The same principle applies to everyday life. Our bodies change, our coloring shifts, our energy evolves. Dressing in a way that reflects who you are now, not who you were decades ago, shows that you're emotionally present and self-aware. I've heard people say, "I don't care what anyone thinks, I'm comfortable." And that's understandable. But being comfortable and being careless aren't the same thing. You can be relaxed and still put together. You can prioritize comfort while still showing respect for your appearance. Even something as simple as getting clothes that actually fit your current body or choosing colors that complement your natural tones can change how people respond to you. Not because of the fabric itself, but because of what it represents. That you're still engaged, still aware, still proud of who you are today. People might not compliment you directly. They might not even consciously notice the change, but they'll smile a little more. They'll treat you with a bit more warmth, because, whether we like it or not, appearance matters. Even in our later years, that first impression still counts. We all want to be heard, especially when we've lived long enough to have something meaningful to say. But sometimes, in our eagerness to share what we know or make sure our point gets across, we forget to leave space for others to speak. It can start innocently enough. Someone brings up a topic you have experience with, so you jump in with a story or advice. Before you know it, 10 minutes have passed and no one else has had a chance to contribute. What makes this habit tricky is that it usually comes from a good place. Most of the time, it's rooted in a genuine desire to help or connect. But here's the problem. When we take up too much space in conversations, we accidentally silence the very people we care about. And they won't tell you directly that you're doing it. Instead, they'll start drifting away. Phone calls get shorter, visits become less frequent. You'll sense the distance, but might not understand where it's coming from. People want to feel heard and valued, not lectured to. When every conversation becomes a one-way street, it quietly wears down relationships, especially with younger family members who might already feel unsure about how to connect across generational lines. It's not about saying less, it's about listening more, allowing for pauses in conversation, asking more questions than you answer, resisting the urge to jump in with advice unless someone specifically asks for it. One of the most powerful things an older person can do is hold back just enough to let others fully express themselves. Not because you don't have something valuable to contribute, but because they need to know their thoughts matter too. Here's what's interesting. The less you dominate conversations, the more people actually want to hear from you. The more you listen, the more they trust you with their thoughts and feelings. You become someone they want to talk to, not someone they feel they have to endure. Next time you're in a conversation, pay attention. Are you really listening, or are you just waiting for your turn to speak? That small shift in awareness can change everything. When people feel truly heard, they open up, they draw closer. They start looking forward to talking with you instead of dreading it. It often starts as a simple observation. You see a teenager constantly looking at their phone and think, in my day, we actually talk to each other face to face. You watch someone in their 30s make a decision you disagree with and think they have no idea how the real world works. Before long, these thoughts start slipping out in conversations with friends, family, even strangers. You might not realize it, but constantly criticizing younger generations sends a powerful and often damaging message. It tells the people around you, especially your own children and grandchildren, that you're not interested in understanding their world, that you're stuck in a time that no longer exists. Here's an uncomfortable truth. Every generation thinks the one coming up behind them is lacking something important. That's not new. But when that criticism becomes your default response to anything different or modern, it doesn't make people see you as wise. It makes them see you as bitter and out of touch. You might think you're just making a harmless observation or even joking around. But to the people hearing it, especially those under 50, it often feels like rejection. Like you're dismissing their entire way of life, their values, their struggles. The result is that they stop opening up to you. They keep conversations surface level. They avoid discussing anything meaningful because they're bracing for judgment. Even when they love you deeply, they start keeping parts of themselves at a distance. This doesn't mean you have to agree with everything younger people do. You don't have to embrace every new trend or change. But it does mean choosing curiosity over criticism. Instead of saying, kids today have it too easy, try asking, what's it like trying to build a life in today's world? When you shift from judgment to genuine interest, you open the door to real connection. You create space for understanding instead of division. Remember, your value doesn't come from comparing the past to the present. It comes from bridging different generations, from being the steady presence that reaches across time, not the voice that shouts about how things used to be better. When younger people feel respected by you, something beautiful happens. They listen more carefully to what you have to say. They ask for your perspective. They come to you not because they have to, but because they want to. You become not just the elder in the room, but the one they admire and turn to for wisdom that listens first, then speaks. That's real influence, and it starts with letting go of the need to be right about how much better things used to be. If you're still with me and finding this valuable, please comment "still here" below to let me know. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing and turning on notifications so you won't miss future discussions. Your engagement helps us continue creating content that makes a real difference. There's a kind of social awareness that often goes unnoticed until it's missing. Things like talking loudly on your phone in quiet public spaces, standing too close to people in line, or playing videos without headphones in waiting rooms. These might seem like small things, but they can significantly impact how others see you. These behaviors might not have been considered rude decades ago. Social expectations were different then, and people were generally more tolerant of loud conversations or unexpected disruptions. But times have changed, social norms have evolved, and what used to be acceptable now makes people quietly uncomfortable. Here's the challenging part. You might not even realize you're doing anything wrong. No one approaches you and says, "Could you please lower your voice?" or "Would you mind giving me some space?" Instead, they'll give you a look, avoid eye contact, or simply move away. It's not personal, but it is noticeable. Whether you're on public transportation, in a coffee shop, or walking through a store, these small breaches of what people now consider common courtesy send a message. They suggest you're not aware of how your actions affect others. Unfortunately, people don't always give older adults the benefit of the doubt. They often assume you should know better, so when they witness these behaviors, they don't attribute them to misunderstanding. They see them as inconsideration. That's not the impression you want to leave. Unfortunately, it's one of the easiest things to adjust. Start observing how people around you behave in public spaces. Notice how they manage their volume, respect personal space, and use technology when others are nearby. Modern etiquette isn't about being overly formal or uptight. It's about being considerate and aware. It shows that you're still tuned into the world around you, still engaged with how your presence affects others. That awareness builds respect. It tells people you may be older, but you're still someone who pays attention, someone who adapts, someone who cares about others' comfort. This doesn't just improve how strangers respond to you, it changes how your own family sees you too. Grandchildren notice when you're considerate in public. Neighbors appreciate it. Their quiet admiration grows because in a world that often feels rushed and inconsiderate, someone who moves with awareness and carries themselves with subtle dignity stands out in the best possible way. Health challenges are a natural part of aging, and there's nothing wrong with acknowledging that reality. But there's a difference between sharing what you're going through and making your medical problems the centerpiece of every conversation. We've all experienced it. Get a few older adults together and the discussion quickly turns into a comparison of who has the worst knee pain, the highest blood pressure, or the longest list of medications. While this might feel like a way to relate to others or find common ground, constantly bringing up health issues can slowly drain the energy from those around you. Here's the thing. Everyone understands that getting older comes with physical challenges. You don't need to pretend everything is perfect. But when your conversations consistently circle back to what hurts, what the doctor said, or what medical procedure is coming next, people start feeling like they're sitting in a medical waiting room rather than enjoying a relationship. This is especially difficult for younger family members. These topics can feel overwhelming to them. They might not know how to respond appropriately, or they might feel helpless hearing about problems they can't solve. So instead of leaning into the conversation, they back away. Not out of lack of love or respect, but out of quiet emotional exhaustion. You absolutely deserve empathy and support. You deserve to be heard when you're struggling. But when health complaints become the primary way you connect with others, it changes the entire dynamic. It shifts from genuine connection to a feeling of caretaking, from conversation to complaint session. Think about the people you most enjoy spending time with. Chances are, they're not the ones who recite every ache and medication they're dealing with. They're the ones who focus on what's still good in their lives. They might mention a challenge they're facing, but they don't let it dominate every interaction. Does this mean you should hide your struggles or suffer in silence? Absolutely not. But it does mean being thoughtful about your audience, your timing, and most importantly, finding balance. Share how you're doing when it's appropriate, but also ask others about their lives. Talk about the book you're reading, the interesting conversation you had with a neighbor, the beautiful sunset you saw yesterday. Your life is still full of experiences and observations that have nothing to do with medical charts, and people want to connect with all of who you are, not just your symptoms. You might be surprised how much lighter and more enjoyable your relationships become when you stop letting health concerns lead every conversation. When you focus on what you can still do, what brings you joy, and what makes you smile, you don't just feel better yourself. You help others feel better too. In a world that already carries enough heaviness, being someone who brings a little lightness to any room is a beautiful gift to offer. One of the most difficult things to recognize in ourselves, especially as we get older, is when our beliefs start becoming barriers instead of bridges. We hold on to ideas that once served us well, principles that guided us through raising families, building careers, and making sense of the world. But over time, if we're not careful, those beliefs can harden into rigid positions that no longer reflect the reality we're living in today. You might catch yourself saying things like, "That's just the way it is and always will be," or "People are far too sensitive these days," or "I don't care what the experts say, I know what's right." While you might feel confident and grounded in these positions, what others often hear is something quite different. Resistance to growth and unwillingness to consider new perspectives. The truth is, the world has changed dramatically, and it continues to change rapidly. Technology, cultural norms, workplace expectations, family structures, our understanding of mental health, the way we communicate, it's all evolving faster than ever before. When we dig in our heels and refuse to even consider alternative viewpoints, it doesn't come across as wisdom or strength. It comes across as stubborn unwillingness to engage with reality. Younger generations notice this immediately, and they usually won't challenge you directly about it. But internally, they quietly categorize you as someone they can't have meaningful discussions with, someone who won't try to understand their perspective, someone who's already made up their mind about everything. That represents a real loss of connection. Whether it's your grandchild exploring non-traditional career paths, your neighbor living a lifestyle you don't fully understand, or a friend dealing with challenges in ways that seem foreign to you, there's so much potential for deeper relationship when curiosity replaces judgment. Staying open to new ideas doesn't mean abandoning your core values or principles. It means being willing to expand your understanding without compromising who you fundamentally are. It means making room in your mind for perspectives that might be different from yours, even if you don't ultimately agree with all of them. Sometimes stubbornness is really fear in disguise. Fear of becoming irrelevant. Fear of being left behind by a world that's moving too fast. Fear that if we let go of old ways of thinking, we'll lose a piece of our identity. But the truth is, your relevance doesn't come from how tightly you grip the past. It comes from how courageously you engage with the present. When you're able to say things like, "I never thought about it that way before," or "Help me understand what that means to you," you open doors that have been closed. People feel safe sharing their thoughts with you. They feel heard and respected. The beautiful part is that sometimes you actually do change your mind about things. Sometimes the younger person you're listening to offers insights you hadn't considered. That kind of humility and openness is what makes people truly admire you. Not because you had all the answers, but because you remained curious about life even in your later years. That's both rare and powerful. As we get older, our pace naturally changes. We slow down a bit, we might feel less steady on our feet, or we become more cautious about how we move. That's completely normal and understandable. But what often happens without us realizing it is that we become less aware of how our movements affect the people sharing space with us. You've probably witnessed this. Someone standing in the middle of a grocery store aisle with their cart positioned sideways, completely blocking the path while they read a product label. Or someone stopping suddenly in a busy walkway, lost in thought, while people flow around them. Maybe it's walking with a companion and gradually drifting into the path of oncoming foot traffic. Most of the time, these situations happen without any bad intentions. You're not trying to be inconsiderate or difficult. You're simply focused on your own task or destination. But to the people around you, especially those who are in a hurry or trying to navigate crowded spaces, it creates friction. It makes their journey just a little bit harder. Here's what's important to understand. People rarely say anything directly. They'll sigh quietly, step around you, maybe exchange a quick glance with someone else, then continue on their way. But over time, these small moments accumulate and affect how others perceive you. They might start thinking of you as someone who's always inadvertently in the way, or they might unconsciously begin avoiding situations where they'd need to navigate public spaces alongside you. Not because they dislike you as a person, but because they feel like they have to constantly manage around your presence. Let me be clear about something important. Moving slowly is not the problem here. The issue is awareness of your surroundings and consideration for others sharing the same space. You can move at whatever pace is comfortable and safe for you while still being mindful of the flow of people around you. You can pause to read something or examine a product while keeping to one side of the walkway. You can walk carefully and deliberately while still being conscious of how your movement affects others. This kind of spatial awareness is especially important in places like airports, busy sidewalks, shopping centres, or even the hallways at your place of worship. These are shared spaces, and being considerate while using them sends a powerful message that you're still present, still aware, still thoughtful about your impact on others. This type of awareness is actually a subtle form of grace and dignity. It tells people that you're not solely focused inward on your own needs and concerns. You're still engaged with the world around you, still considerate, still kind. Most people aren't expecting perfection from you. They're not looking for you to move like someone half your age. They're simply hoping for a little effort, a little awareness, a little consideration for the shared experience of being in public together. When you demonstrate that consideration, you stand out in the best possible way. Not as someone who's slower or more careful, but as someone who's thoughtful and respectful. That kind of present awareness is more impactful than you might realize. A good sense of humor is truly one of the most valuable things you can carry with you into your later years. It keeps conversations light, helps others feel comfortable around you, and can ease tension even in difficult moments. But not all humor ages gracefully, and some types of jokes that might have gotten laughs decades ago can quietly create distance between you and others today. You might find yourself joking the same way you always have. A bit of sarcasm here, a teasing comment there, maybe a remark that plays on old stereotypes or pokes fun at someone's appearance, background, or personal choices. You might laugh as you say it and follow up with something like, "I'm just kidding around," or "Come on, don't be so serious." But here's what has shifted. The world around you has changed, and the way people understand and respond to humor has evolved significantly. While humor used to often rely on pointing out differences or making light of other people's circumstances, today's social environment places much more emphasis on inclusion, empathy, and respect for diverse experiences and backgrounds. When a joke feels disconnected from those values, especially when it comes from someone older, it doesn't land as funny. Instead, it comes across as out of touch, or worse, disrespectful. Younger people especially are navigating a cultural landscape that prioritizes understanding and kindness over humor that comes at someone else's expense. When they hear jokes that feel outdated or insensitive, they probably won't confront you about it directly. They'll just smile politely, maybe laugh uncomfortably, then gradually create more distance in the relationship. You'll sense that something has shifted, but you might not understand what caused it. This doesn't mean you need to walk on eggshells or that humor is somehow off limits now. It doesn't mean you can't be funny or that everything has to be overly serious, but it does mean taking a moment to consider your jokes before you share them. Ask yourself, is this funny because it's clever and brings joy? Or is it funny because it puts someone else down or makes them uncomfortable? The best kind of humor, especially as we get older, is the type that lifts people up rather than creating discomfort. That brings lightness without heaviness. That shows you're not stuck in the past, but evolving along with everyone else around you. Nothing builds connection faster than being able to laugh at yourself and your own experiences. It demonstrates humility, perspective, and shows that you're not trying to prove anything or maintain some kind of superiority. You're just here to enjoy the moment alongside others. When people see that kind of humor, they relax in your presence. They engage more freely. They start seeing you not just as the older person in the room, but as someone who still understands how to connect and bring joy without causing discomfort. A warm sense of humor will take you far in life. But humor that's thoughtful, self-aware, and considerate of others will keep the door to meaningful connection wide open at any age. If you've made it this far and are finding this helpful, please comment "Learned something" below. Your engagement means a lot and helps us know this content is making a difference. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so and turning on notifications for future discussions. Getting older certainly brings real challenges that no one can deny. There are activities that used to be simple that now require more time, more care, and sometimes assistance from others. But there's an important difference between genuinely needing help and automatically defaulting to asking for it when you're still perfectly capable of handling things yourself. Over time, that difference becomes something people notice far more than they'll ever mention out loud. You might find yourself frequently saying things like, "Could you just do this for me?" Or, "I don't understand how any of this works. I'll probably mess it up anyway." Initially, these requests seem perfectly reasonable and innocent. But when they become your go-to response, especially for tasks you're still able to manage, they can quietly begin to wear on the people in your life. Family members might start feeling more like caretakers than relatives, even when you're perfectly capable of independence. Friends might notice that they're always the ones reaching, lifting, organizing, or figuring things out for you. Though they might smile and say it's no trouble at all, internally they may begin to feel something else entirely. Resentment. What makes this pattern even more complex is that sometimes it happens subconsciously. It's not necessarily laziness or manipulation. Often it's fear driving the behavior, fear of making mistakes, fear of looking foolish, fear of not being able to keep up with how things work nowadays. So you let someone else step in and handle it for you. With each small surrender of responsibility, your sense of independence slips away just a little bit more. But here's something important to understand. People actually admire effort more than they admire perfection. They would much rather see you try something and struggle a little than watch you give up before you even attempt it. Your children, grandchildren, neighbors and friends feel genuinely proud when they see you still engaging with life, still wanting to learn new things, still participating actively, rather than passively waiting for others to do everything for you. When you ask for help, only when you truly need it, people trust your requests more. They don't feel like they're being taken advantage of or manipulated. They feel honored to assist because they know it's coming from a place of genuine need rather than habit or convenience. Maintaining your sense of personal agency and independence isn't about pretending you're decades younger than you are. It's about showing up with whatever capabilities you do have, asking clearly for help with things you genuinely cannot manage, and respecting the important boundary between those two categories. You might be amazed by how empowered and confident you feel when you start reclaiming the smaller tasks and responsibilities. Things like carrying your own shopping bag when possible, figuring out how to use a new device or appliance, following a recipe without asking someone to supervise every step. These small victories build genuine confidence and self-respect. They remind both you and everyone around you that while age may change what you're physically capable of, it doesn't eliminate your strength, your determination, or your dignity. The people who truly age well and maintain strong relationships aren't necessarily those who never need assistance. They're the ones who understand when to ask for help and when to stand confidently and say, "I can handle this myself." After living for several decades, accumulating experiences, making difficult decisions and learning lessons the hard way, it's completely understandable that many older adults feel they've earned their place at the table. They feel like they have valuable insights and answers based on all they've been through. In many cases, they absolutely do. But here's where things can get complicated. When the need to be right in every situation becomes more important than the need to connect with others, people gradually stop listening to what you have to say. This tendency might show up in seemingly small ways. Correcting someone's story during dinner conversation. Insisting that your method of doing something is the only way that makes logical sense. Dismissing new ideas with a wave of your hand. Responding to someone else's opinion with, "Trust me, I know better than that." At first, others might just shrug off these moments. They might even chuckle and think it's endearing. But over time, being around someone who always needs to have the final word becomes emotionally exhausting. People start avoiding deeper conversations with you. They withhold their real thoughts and feelings. They stop bringing up topics they care about because they know you'll just correct them or dismiss their perspective. They don't stop talking to you because you've convinced them you're right. They stop because it's simply easier to keep things surface level than to deal with constant correction. The irony in this pattern is that many older folks don't behave this way out of arrogance or a desire to dominate others. They do it because it feels safe, because it gives them a sense that they still have authority and relevance in a world that seems to be changing rapidly around them. But when being right becomes more important than being kind, curious, or connected, the strategy backfires completely. True wisdom isn't about having all the answers or winning every discussion. It's about knowing when to offer your perspective and when to create space for someone else to explore theirs. It's about holding your opinions with confidence while also maintaining openness to different viewpoints. Here's a truth that most people will never say directly to your face. The individuals we most admire and respect aren't the ones who constantly correct us or prove their superior knowledge. They're the ones who listen thoughtfully, reflect on what they've heard, and gently invite us to consider different possibilities without forcing their conclusions on us. When you stop trying to win every conversation, something interesting happens. People actually start seeking out your opinion more often. They ask for your advice and perspective. They value your input not because you dominate every discussion, but because when you do speak, your words carry thoughtful weight and consideration. Your voice matters more because you don't use it just to prove points or establish superiority. In the end, the desperate need to always be right fades away over time. What people remember and treasure is how you made them feel during your interactions. When you leave space for others to be heard, gently challenged when appropriate, and genuinely supported, your presence becomes something they truly value and seek out, rather than something they simply tolerate out of obligation. Now that we've walked through these 12 patterns together, I want you to take a moment for gentle reflection, not harsh self-judgment. Which of these behaviors have quietly become part of your daily routine? Which ones surprised you or caught you off guard? And which ones do you feel ready to work on, even if you start with small changes? This entire discussion wasn't designed to make you feel ashamed or criticized. It was created to offer you something most people don't receive: honest, caring insight into how your actions might be affecting your relationships. Because the reality is, these behaviors don't make you a bad person or mean that you're failing at aging. They're simply blind spots, patterns that can develop gradually over time without us even noticing they're happening. Once we do become aware of them, that's when real strength and character show themselves. Not in pretending these patterns don't exist or getting defensive about them, but in saying, I can see this now. I have the power to do better. I'm still capable of growth and positive change. That's what aging gracefully is really about. It's not about desperately clinging to how things used to be or stubbornly resisting all change. It's about stepping into each new day with self-awareness, dignity, and the inner strength of someone who still wants to connect meaningfully with others, continue evolving as a person, and be a source of warmth and wisdom in other people's lives. As you move forward from here, keep these observations in mind, not as a harsh checklist to judge yourself against, but as gentle reminders. They're ways to continue showing up in the world with grace, presence, and the kind of character that leaves others feeling respected, comfortable, and genuinely inspired by your example. Remember, it's never too late to adjust how you interact with the world around you. Small changes in how you speak, listen, present yourself, connect with others, or engage with new ideas can completely transform how people experience your presence and, just as importantly, how you experience your own place in the world and your relationships. Thank you for taking this journey with me today. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please leave a comment below sharing one insight that resonated with you and how you might apply it in your own life. Your reflections and experiences are valuable, and reading your comments provides tremendous encouragement and motivation for creating more content like this. If you found this discussion helpful and meaningful, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to stay connected, and share it with others who might benefit from this conversation. Your support enables us to continue developing content that truly makes a positive difference in people's lives. Thanks for being here today, and I look forward to our next meaningful conversation together.